System 76 is launching a new system, a new Thelio Mira. It's a miracle that anybody can afford new hardware, am I right? I've already unboxed it, I've already been playing with it. This is the System 76 R4 Thelio Mira. And this was designed in Colorado in the United States. Denver, Colorado. System 76, Denver-based Linux company behind Pop! OS and the Cosmic desktop environment. More on the Cosmic environment later. There's a lot of interesting stuff ahead. Unlike typical OEM desktops, this is a semi-custom platform that blends standard ATX components with a few purpose-built subsystems that are, I guess, about quality of life is how I would explain it. The pitch from System 76 is quality of life improvements that are worth the premium. And sure, understand that this thing is mostly standard high-end AM5, at least when we're talking about desktop and everything else like that. But there is a custom power control board and an I/O integration layer that's built around it. And some fun stuff like these pogo pins. So let's look inside. At its core, it's Ryzen 9000. That's AM5 on an ASRock X870 board with System 76 firmware. And you can use up to a 9950X 3D memory, it's DDR5 up to 192 gigabytes and 4 DIMMs. GPU is a single primary PCIe 5.0 X16 slot. You could use a 3 or a 4 slot card. You got one Gen 5 NVMe, one Gen 4 NVMe, and you've got networking 2.5 gig Ethernet plus Wi-Fi 7. It's pretty. You could build this, except for the case. Now, there's nothing exotic in terms of the topology here of the motherboard. You got a little bit of lane sharing for that second M.2 in the bottom PCIe slot, but this gives you reasonable options for expansion. If we want to take a look at the rear I/O, is pretty awesome. It's what you'd expect. You got two built-in antennas. You can replace this as a standard reverse SMA adapter. A better antenna would definitely get you better range on this Wi-Fi 7 access point, but hey, it's okay. You get your BIOS flashback button, which is useful if you're going to upgrade the CPU, and the CPU is not supported yet. HDMI 2.1. Then you've got two Type-C ports. Those are USB 4. Then you got two USB 3.1 Gen 1 ports, that's 5 gigabit, 4 USB 2.0 ports for peripherals, 2 more high-speed USB ports, and then 2 more USB 2.0 ports. You get a 3.5mm line-out jack, a 3.5mm line-in jack, and an optical SPDIF. From the GPU, which is an RTX 5070 Ti, you've got HDMI and 3 DisplayPort. As this is more or less a standard ATX case, there are 7 slots at the rear, and it's got a sliding locking mechanism, so you only have to loosen 2 screws to take out any of your PCIe peripherals. The most non-standard component is actually the Thelio I/O daughter board inside. This handles fan control, power sequencing from the front power button. It runs open source firmware, and that's nice to see. And this is, why they do this is really just quality of life. It doesn't rely on the motherboard fan headers and front panel wiring. System 76 abstracts that control onto their own board. This enables better OS level thermal integration and Pop! OS awareness of what's going on with the connection here. It's consistent behavior across configurations, but that also means you're not dealing with purely, dumb ATX wiring harnesses and things like that. It's a little bit like a mini BMC for desktop thermals and I/O orchestration, and it even has its own separate power button on the PCB. Now, System 76 has put a lot of thought into this case, and that's part of what they've put thought into, and it is around making things more serviceable. And I see this as, a major upgrade from their last chassis designs with front I/O and exhaust on the top and lots of fun things like that, and also magnetic panels. Look, I took the panel off, and the fans came, and I didn't have to unplug the fans because there's pogo pins here, little gold pins, little gold contacts that connect. This makes it easier to clean. This makes it easier to upgrade. This also takes away a significant amount of stuff on the inside when you pop the side off. That makes it easier for serviceability, easier for cleaning dust. I mean, it's subtle, but it's huge. Removing the panels does not disturb the wiring, and popping the side off with fans attached gives you a lot more room to work inside when it does need maintenance. Got my dust filter there. There's nothing on this side for that. And you end up with a clean design. There's an AIO in the top. That's from ID Cooling. So the airflow here is structured. The top is exhaust. The side and bottom are intake fans. And so from the bottom, from the side, and out the top. This is designed to prioritize sustained cooling to enable maximum thermal dissipation, IMHO. Especially like how the side panels are blowing down on the motherboard. DDR5 does not get enough cooling in most modern cases. This isn't the case here. Let's see what I did there. This isn't the case. So you can have higher sustained boost clocks and you get better overall cooling for your motherboard, better longevity. The system is tuned for long duration compute loads, not just gaming style, transient spikes and things like that. The GPU layout here is also interesting. This is very shipping friendly. I mean, it's PCIe Gen 5, but you've got a lot of room physically and mechanically it's attached. Maximum 358 millimeters, 348 millimeters recommended. It's up to 3 slots officially, but 4 slots would work fine here. Had no problems fitting, say, like an RTX 6000 in here. The GPU brace is integrated into the chassis, which is nice to see, especially for shipping and moving it around. If that's not the case, there is a chance that these big GPUs will break the slot on your motherboard. The power supply is the oddest thing, not really odd, it's SFX. So that tops out at about 1200 watts for a reasonable SFX power supply. This is a Lee & Lee power supply here. If you were gonna run 2 GPUs in this case, you might have a little bit of trouble finding an SFX power supply that would support, say, 2 600 watt GPUs, but 2, 3, or 400 watt GPUs with this setup, no problem. So SFX sort of makes sense here. And like I was saying before, you've got 2 M.2 slots for expansion, but check this out. There's a 2.5-inch rear access SATA bay, and it's already pre-wired for 2 SATA connections. So if you're going to run like a 4 or 8 terabyte SATA SSD for bulk storage, you've got that option here at the back. The layout here makes for a compact footprint with high density, but IMHO doesn't really sacrifice much in terms of serviceability. In fact, this is much better serviceability for this generation of case than we previously dealt with from System 76. It's got a mainstream AM5 motherboard and the integration and ease of use because the I/O shield is fully cut out here. So if you needed to replace the motherboard with a different motherboard, you could. Chassis airflow and thermal design, pogo fan design, like clean cable routing. This is what you're buying, more or less. Oh, and in case you're wondering about the specific ASRock motherboard they're using here, it's the X870 Pro RS Wi-Fi. As this case is designed for AIO cooling and exhaust out the top, there is no cutout for a rear fan, which makes sense with how they've designed this. So there's 3 things to keep in mind when you're thinking about the physical hardware here. The real differentiator is System 76's like fan plus orchestration I/O board. The chassis integration is unusually clean, magnetic panels, pogo pins, extremely serviceable. I wouldn't be surprised if more case manufacturers pick up the pogo pin options because it's so clean. It's a nice aesthetic. If you ignore the I/O board and the thoughtful thermal design and that sort of stuff, you'll sort of miss what System 76 is actually doing here from a hardware perspective. It's about quality of life. You can actually see the little fan breakout boards that are scattered around the case. There's one here with 2 connections on the front, 1 4-pin fan connection on the rear, and then there's another one right here. Same board configuration almost. All of your unused power supply cables are strapped safely in the bottom of the case. To take the top off, you got to remove 4 screws. There's still some magnets to hold the top in place. And then here you can see you've got extra screws for mounting other accessories in the case. 1 screw and a series of magnets are what hold on the front glass case. And you could get creative. I mean, it's glass, so you could put, a stencil or etching behind it. It's got a lovely System 76 at the bottom there. You can see they've got a number of Velcro straps for cable routing and cable management at the front. Also a really nice, satisfying mechanical power button with a ring light, 2 Type A 5 gigabit ports, a 10 gigabit Type C port, and a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. I'm also a fan of System 76 keyboards. I've got the Launch Heavy, and you can see that it is very, very well battle tested on my desk here. I bought these. I'm going to be buying the System 76 keyboard. The system is launching around April 10th. I did manage to get System 76 to send me this a little early, but that was my request, and this is not a sponsored review. I probably won't buy the system, but I will probably be buying the keyboard. It's just a convenient keyboard for working on the workbench because it's got USB ports built in. It's 10 gigabit. You get Type C and Type A ports. Some slightly different switches. My switches are upgradable, but I like what System 76 is doing. And generally take everything that I say with a grain of salt because I like what System 76 is doing. I like what they're doing with the Cosmic desktop operating system, and I like the mission that they're on. And so, buying a system like this from System 76 is, in a way, supporting what they're doing. And this is also not a lot different than a system that I would build for myself. It's just in, clad in System 76ness. But like I say, launching a new system into the current economic climate, it's a miracle if anybody can afford hardware right now. So that's enough about the hardware. Let's take a look at Pop! OS and Cosmic next. Cosmic Desktop, because System 76 is as much or more about the software experience and the tooling that they're building on Linux as they are about turnkey, ready-to-use hardware that is premium. Pop! OS, Cosmic, what are they? Well, you can try them now. You don't even have to have a System 76 machine. You can evaluate how good you're going to enjoy that Linux experience before you even have the System 76 hardware. Pop! OS, it feels and looks a lot like Ubuntu. It's kind of based on Ubuntu, but imagine if... I'll probably get myself in trouble for this, but imagine someone reimagining what Ubuntu should have been, but they actually have pretty good taste in how the desktop should be set up. Ooh. No disrespect to what Ubuntu is doing, but it definitely feels like Camel built by committee sometimes. Pop! OS is not that at all. It is really well put together, and the Cosmic Desktop experience is also from System 76. Now, if you want to run GNOME or KDE or XFCE or i3 or anything like that, you can, because it's Linux. It's just a computer. That's fine. You can even run all the System 76 accoutrement not on System 76 hardware, and that's completely fine. Cosmic is a reimagining of what a modern desktop experience should be without getting really far off course for what a normal person that has used a computer, whether that's Mac or Windows, would expect from computer interaction. I don't really know a more succinct way to explain that. It has advanced features. One of those advanced features is window tiling. And this is a great on-ramp into a tiling window manager. And once a tiling window manager has its hooks in how you think about things, you'll wonder how you were using a computer before tiling window manager. On the Microsoft side of things with Windows, like Windows Power Toys for window management, some of you have probably installed Windows Power Toys and you're using that. There are similar things for Mac. I think Spectacle used to be one. I'm not sure what the current zeitgeist is on the Mac side of things, but it's like that turned up to 11. And this is kind of Babby's first tiling window manager. You can even go off the deep end and do even more advanced stuff. But this feels and tastes better in terms of like the taste of the system. If you're used to like i3 as a window manager and using that, I think this is a more cohesive experience. I think this is overall a better experience what System 76 has put together with Cosmic. And so in the tray up there, in the taskbar, whatever you want to call it, you can decide if you want a workspace to be tiling or not tiling. And not tiling is, the window management that you're used to. But if you turn on tiling, something magical happens. And that is when a new window opens, it'll automatically be placed. This ideally works best with a 4K monitor. It can work really well with multiple monitors. But also when you resize, it can resize all of the windows if you want. The Windows key or Super on our System 76 launch, the new launch keyboard, and G will toggle a window between floating mode and tiling mode. So if a window pops up and it's like rearranged your carefully laid out desktop, you can just hit Super G and it'll float on top of the other windows so you can deal with it. I like to run Steam and the Steam Messenger stuff as floating windows, but everything else, terminal and that kind of thing. So I've got two terminals side by side here, but it's also easy to drag and drop and arrange windows, and it will automatically resize the other windows to fit. And so this is kind of a productivity hack. When you need to look at multiple things at once and have multiple windows sized just so on your display, you'll wonder why you spent so much time fiddling with sizing the windows to be just right. Or if you're like me, when you have to use a Windows machine, everything just sort of lands in a stacked mess. And it's like, okay, I need to click on this one little corner of the window up here, and it was back there somewhere, and you've got a mental map of how that works. The cognitive load from this is much lower. And once you get used to that, you will want the lower cognitive load of a tiling window manager all the time. And workspaces, if you're not familiar, I feel like, Windows and Mac both have workspaces. It's like virtual desktops where you have a desktop and you have some windows and then you like swipe on the touchpad and you get another desktop. and group windows that way. You can mix whether or not a workspace is tiling windows or not. So problematic applications or applications that don't support the tiling ideology can live on that desktop, and everything else can live on another desktop. Other than that, it's pretty similar in terms of how window management works and how file management works. There's a lot of things that you get used to. There are a lot of little subtle quality of life improvements over GNOME. The changes to the fonts, readability, sharpness. There's a lot of little tweaks, just even in how like fonts are rendered, that are nice quality of life improvements that almost nobody notices. But now that I point out, you're like, hey, yeah, wait a minute, that is oddly easier to read. And that attention to detail is what makes System 76 sort of magical. And there's a firmware manager here as well for managing the firmware on the system and BIOS updates and everything else. Now, Linux provides that. So like if you've got, a Logitech wireless mouse, it'll update the firmware on your Logitech wireless mouse. But the firmware update manager here is also set up for System 76 hardware. And so that customized ASRock motherboard can get your BIOS updates that way. You can do it the usual way too, but you can get the System 76 firmware through the firmware update manager, which is a little nicer. So again, it's attention to detail, support, turnkey, and making the cognitive load of having to deal with, system administration or computer, like the really low level janitoring stuff, go away. That's the value prop. That's what the premium for System 76 is for. So if you just want to build your own machine and run Pop! OS and have this experience, you can do that. It's open source. It's totally fine. And you should do that so that you can, see what I'm saying here. And then who knows, maybe you'll go Wayland heavy and then it'll be all sway bar this and down with X11 that. I don't know. But it is fun to see this, and it is fun to see how far System 76 has come with Cosmic. And Cosmic is one of the really good on-ramps in terms of a desktop experience for relatively new Linux users and even really experienced Linux users. I asked some of the most experienced Linux users I know what they thought about the Cosmic desktop, and their thoughts echo a lot of my own. So it's really nice to see, and really nice to see that Cosmic has good taste in terms of getting you used to a tiling window manager, because it is the superior window management experience, if I do say so myself. So there you go. There's a quick introduction to the Thelio Mira system. It's got one of the best sets of documentation online. If there's any question that I haven't answered, be sure to check out the Thelio Mira documentation, because it's got the full system build all the way down to the screw. You need to change the motherboard, swap the CMOS battery, troubleshoot, one of the little fan boards. Basically anything you could ever want is very, very well documented in System 76 online repository. So check that out. But that's been a quick look at the system, Cosmic Desktop, and a little bit more about Pop! OS and System 76 as a company. If you buy this, you are definitely buying something for the turnkey and like the premium option and the System 76 name. You can build a system like this and save some money, but then like warranty service and all of that, you got individual parts warranties and that sort of thing. So when you buy from System 76, they handle all that. They handle the support. They also take care of bundling and putting together the firmware. So when there's a BIOS update or anything like that, that is going to be handled at the operating system level just through like the firmware update manager. And some of that may come from, mainline firmware update management. But I also trust System 76 to have done the testing and integration with that. Just not just for the system, but also the other stuff that they've done to do the customization. So, makes sense to me. I also like to see System 76 leaning into the AIO cooling. ID cooling has a good reputation, and of course, System 76 has pretty long warranties with their systems and long support plans. So I'll be curious to see how that stacks up over the long haul. The part that I would be most worried about for a 5-year lifetime on this is definitely going to be the AIO. But by having the radiator mounted in the top and the pump at the lowest part in the loop and how they've mounted the tubes and all that kind of stuff, it has the shot at longevity. Time will tell. Engage below. If you're watching this in the far future, check out the Level 1 forums because people will probably have commented. That said, I'm running an AIO in my systems as well, and I'm not super worried about it. But it is maybe a thing. There's also, there's been some rough edges around AMD AM5 CPUs Some people have experienced catastrophic CPU failure, and there's some question of, is it the CPU? Is it the motherboards? The failure occurs slightly more often on some brands of motherboard, ASRock, also Asus and some others, than other brands of motherboard. What's up with that? I think that problem generally has been buttoned up. The failure rates definitely in the low percentage rate. It's definitely not the rate of failure that we saw with Intel 13th and 14th gen, where, we double digit percentages, like significant double digit percentages. But it has been a thing that a lot of people have freaked out about online. But in terms of retailer returns and percentages that way, it's not a huge percentage, but it is concerning. And there have been BIOS updates and platform updates from both AMD and board partners to try to deal with that. So probably not anything to worry about in general, but it definitely sucks if it happens to you. So I don't know. That's pretty much the end of it. This is the System 76 Thelio Mira. As I have said, I'm Wendell. This is Level 1. If you have any questions or I missed anything, hit me up in the forum. Let's chat. I'm signing out, and I'll see you there.